Good afternoon and welcome to the Asian American Women's Executive Panel. With us we have Asian Hall of Fame presenting a powerhouse panel of executive women who represent industries in policy, engineering, and STEM, and marketing. My name is Maki Shea, and I am a Grammy voting member. The Grammys have 11,000 voting members, of which only 2% are Asian. We have Lang Lang, Yo-Yo Ma, and me. So we're very excited to represent Asian excellence, Asian women, and all of our hard work in getting to where we are today and leading society and our communities to the next era. So I would like to introduce three powerhouse women that everyone should know. You should tag them, you should follow them, you should support them, because there are amazing executives and amazing leaders, not only in this great state, but also in the country. So we're very proud today to introduce the three. I have biographies of each one that's about 3 pages long. Instead of doing that, for the sake of time, since we do have a hard stop at 4:35, I'm going to have each one introduce themselves, their career, their coming to America story, their family, and how it affected and inspired their success today. So, to my right, please welcome the Deputy Governor of this great state, Grace Howell. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see you. I was born on a cold, wintry day in February. I'm just kidding. So I am the Deputy Governor for Health and Human Services for Governor J.B. Pritzker. I've been a part of his office since October of last year. And prior to that, since 2019, I was the Secretary of the Illinois Department of Human Services, so I've been part of the Pritzker administration since he took office. I've been working in government and nonprofit since my early 20s. I started my career in earnest working on local political campaigns, but really dug into the nonprofit work in Chinatown at the Chinese American Service League, and then Uptown Chinese Mutual Aid, and then I entered government service, and I've also worked in philanthropy. And so one of the things that I always talk about, I've spent my whole career trying to figure out how not to make money, and my husband's been very excited about that. But seriously, I think, when we talk about government and when we talk about the way that our administration has tried to manage this state, is that we're running a $123 billion organization. And when under my portfolio, which is all the health and human services agencies, my portfolio is actually $60 billion. So we take this deadly serious. When people talk about going into government or nonprofit, it's like, oh, we want to help people. We want to give back. Of course, that is what motivates me, but we need to know how to manage very strongly. So my dad came to the United States in the late 1960s to pursue the American dream, started a restaurant, go to school, and then my mom came a few years later to get married and to have me. So I am very proud of my Chinese heritage. It's absolutely a part of my DNA and what motivated me to work in the Chinese American community when I started my career. And it is actually the bedrock of how I interact with community, how I make decisions, and what motivates me in my work. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Deputy Governor. And we also have a local Chinatown born and raised with Dr. Karen Ng, and we would love to hear from her, the Coming to America story and the family that inspired her success today.
Hi, nice to be here, back in Chicago. My name is Karen Ng. I currently run an engineering company based up in Schaumburg that I took over from my family and purchased out the assets in 2000. So I've been running the company for about 24 years, but I grew up with the company since age 13. I also studied and became a doctor. So I'm an eye doctor too, because I'm a good Chinese girl that did not become the lawyer, became the doctor. So I practiced for the first 8 years of my career and then decided to take over family business. So I am fourth generation on one side. Like Maki said, I was born in Chinatown, Chicago, and then grew up in the suburbs of Illinois. And then on my other side, my family came over because Catholic Charities supported them during the war. So that's how we came over. So I'm third generation, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that's wonderful. A story of a family legacy where the next generation takes over and helps move the further generations into the future. And we also have with us today Professor of Marketing with Kellogg School of Business. We're excited that she is here with us today, Dr. Angela Lee.
Hello, everybody. It's really nice to be here. I have a slightly different trajectory. I would say, first generation. I am the first one in my family to come to the U.S. In 1995. I am a native of Hong Kong. I was born and raised there. I did my undergrad in Hawaii, which is of course part of the US, but feels very different from the US. We always refer to the mainland. The mainland was the US. I went back to Hong Kong, and I continued my education in Hong Kong in economics. And I decided very early on at that time that, there is no money to be made in academia, so I better go get a job in the industry. I was a fundraising consultant. I started my own company in Hong Kong, and in '88, I sold my company and I moved to Toronto. And I got very bored after 2-3 years, continued working as a fundraising consultant. I was missing the intellectual stimulation, and I decided to go back to school, and that's where I got my PhD in marketing at the University of Toronto. I was fortunate enough to receive multiple fantastic offers, including Stanford, MIT, and of course, Kellogg. And I decided to come to Kellogg because Kellogg was, and will still be the #1 marketing department in the world. Now, so I started as an assistant professor, and for many, many years, I always laughed and I said, I am the token Chinese at Kellogg. And I was really the only Chinese faculty for many, many years, for at least 15 or so years. I am a full professor now. I also did wonderfully in my career. I was a past president of the Association of Consumer Research. I served as a board member on the American Marketing Association, and I was named a fellow of various organizations, including the American Psychological Society and, of course, Association for Consumer Research. And so I looked around me, and I felt it is really unfair that why am I kind of the only Chinese, the only Asian female who raised to where I am with my stature. And so I do understand the challenges of being an Asian or being a Chinese American and working in this society. And I'm here to kind of encourage all of you to think about what you can do to serve and also grow with the community that we are in.
You know, that's some amazing inspiration for all of us. So many people here, about 1,000 attendees at this convention, are CEOs from China, CEOs in Chicago and in this region. And they do need to hear that there are a lot of narratives out there regarding the opportunities to promote as well as challenges we may face. So we would love to ask the Deputy Governor this question, as well as Dr. Ang. Why do you feel it's important for Asian women to be more visible in leadership positions when we come from a traditional society and a culture that normally the women need to be behind the man? And how does this increased engagement benefit American society at large?
It's a two-pronged question. I would say, what do you see when you see us, right? I mean, it's interesting that we followed the panel of ambassadors, and it does not go unnoticed by me that they were all white men. Pardon me? Oh, sorry. They're all men. Apologies. And so I think it's important to elevate what we do and for people to actually want to listen so that they can cross out what they have already potentially judged from the stereotypes that exist in all of society. I think if you get to know us, we're just 3 examples of millions of outstanding Asian American women who are doing amazing work and really just getting shit done, right? So we are power brokers, we are warriors, we are fixers, we are imaginators, innovators, and we don't want to be underestimated at all. And I think that there is a value in thinking about how, and this has been something that has been discussed for decades at this point, is that diversity is actually more productive and more profitable. And I know that this has been much debated in many, many sectors, but as our country becomes and our world becomes more global, it is critically important that our voices are recognized, not because it's a nice thing to do, but because we can actually make organizations more effective. And we have demonstrated and proven that over and over that we've been able to be valued leaders.
And competent, yeah, and able to support that. So I want to use you as an example because you started off in the same organizations that I help support, which is the Chinese American Service League and CMAA, and then we've watched you grow in your career, and I mean, you got a pretty powerful position right now, and I think that other Asian American women see this, and they're inspired that they can do it, and you're representing us in the state of Illinois, and you're still the same person, you just have a little more influence now to make things happen. And so I think it's wonderful that you have a role model, or all of us have this role model mindset that you're representing for the next generation to come on up and to be able to do what we do.
I think that's exactly right. And also, I don't think companies have a choice. They have to include women in leadership because the men die sooner. And we're forever young. Asian women look forever 31. It's true. It's true. And I also, all jesting aside, consumers, very important part, very important block. I know I used to work at Disney, and we would always make sure we had a female executive to tap into that consumer market because it's the girls who are buying, it's the women who are buying. They're telling their dads and husbands where to vacation. They're making the decisions, and they also hold the credit card of their husbands. So very important for you CEOs out there who are wondering if you should diversify your executive rank. You really should consider that promotion.
I think it's my credit card, though.
It's your credit card, too. It's actually, what's his is mine, and what's mine is mine now. So it's a different twist to the ancient ways. But I think we also have here with us a marketing expert who devoted her entire career on studying bias, studying consumer productivity, consumer trends. We would love to hear from you, Dr. Lee, your amazing inspiration on how the escalating anti-Chinese bias in America can be changed. Is it possible? We know that anti-Chinese bias in this country has been happening for a long time. It's not just because of COVID or the last few years. My 15-year-old said to me, "Mommy, it's very strange that America has always had a labor shortage. Every time they've had a job or help wanted ad, China responded. They sent workers to build a railroad. Japan responded, sent workers to build the sugar plantations in Hawaii, to build the farms in California. Each time, Asia responded because there was no other labor. But every time we answer, help wanted, we come and they don't like us. They don't want us here. So now that we have a new opportunity, we have a new administration, we have a new budget in place, new cabinet in place, new opportunities, or maybe not. How would you recommend that companies and people in power reshape public perception of Chinese and Asian American contributions in society?
I think it's a complex question. And it's not just companies, it's everyone, right? It's like the election. No one walks into a polling booth with 2,000 votes, right? We all walk in with one vote. And it is the same thing that we are all part of this community and we all have to play our share, and not just companies, but also consumers or everyday citizens. And I think, first of all, we need to recognize there are stereotypes, and stereotypes are not wrong. Stereotypes are shortcuts. When we do not know, how to interact, how to respond to other people, we rely on what do I know about the culture to respond to them. And so Asian and Chinese, the stereotype is people are very quiet, they're very humble, and we perfect that stereotype too, in the sense that most Asian and most Asian women are not assertive, with the exception of everybody in this room, which is true. The fact that you're sitting here, that means you are successful, and that means you have been assertive in your life. But do recognize that a lot of our fellow Chinese, fellow Asians are not. And how do we overcome this? And because it is a cultural thing, right? Because we are taught and raised to be humble, to conform. And it's also important to bear in mind that Asian Americans are not all alike. In fact, South Asians and East Asians are very, very different. The culture background is very different. East Asians grew up in a culture that value face. We are a face culture. That means we conform, we don't disrupt, we accept, we are humble. South Indians are raised in a culture of honor. They said we need to do things and to protect ourselves, to protect our in-group. Now, because you have to think back to the history of China, it's very homogeneous. And the history of India, even today, all the different provinces are very different. And yet Chinese is very homogeneous, right? And so this idea of being humble, think about, for those of you who are older generation, when you invite people to your house, we say, please come to my humble home. You may have the most elaborate meal, and you say, oh, this is actually not very good food, and the wine is not very good wine, which is very different from our American friends. They will really want to show you, the most beautiful piece of tapestry, the exotic artwork, and they will brag about, how they slaved on creating this magnificent food and this bottle of wine. So that culture is very different. And because Americans, non-Asian Americans, do not recognize that. They think that, oh, you're very honest. If your home is not very nice, you are not very nice. And if you say, well, I don't know if I can do this, knowing full well you can do something, but in order to be humble, you say, I may not be able to do this. Don't say that. Don't even think that, right? And you should also encourage your staff and your other colleagues and your children to always present themselves the way that they want other people to see them. So be more assertive. And this is important. Now, the other thing is, we also, Chinese Americans really have this ethnic homophily. We like hanging out with Chinese. We like to have Chinese food. We go out and we would kind of rub shoulders with other Chinese people. And we need to remember that the more we do this, the more it reinforces the stereotype that Americans are very different from Asian Americans or Chinese Americans because they don't hang out with us, they don't do
No,
this,
I like
they
what
don't
you're
do
saying
that.
there, which is really to cross the aisle and to cross-cultural, interracial, and make friends outside of your group.
Yes.
That's really important.
And also introduce your American friends, your Caucasian friends, to your Chinese culture. So they may not want you to actually just talk about what you do, but if you invite them and say, why don't we go for dim sum lunch? And you introduce to them the history of dim sum. You tell them something interesting about the culture. So these are different ways that we could break the barrier and kind of work with them, be friends with them, and that is how we can manage some of these Asian hate.
Dr. Lee, I love what you said, and it really aligns with what the ambassadors were saying, including Gary Locke. It's a local-to-local and a person-to-person interaction. I wanted to throw a curveball here for Dr. Karen Ng, which is that I'm really interested in her local family business, which went global because of her leadership. I mean, I'm looking at this. Their clients include PepsiCo, Campbell's, Kraft Heinz, General Mills, Nestle, British Petroleum, and many others. So they were a local company and had these international connections and partnerships around the world. What made you pivot this company, engineering specialized company, to this global landscape?
Yes, so I invest in the companies that are my clients, one, which means I get to read the corporate reports. When you read the corporate reports, it tells you where they're spending their capital. And even though you're saying you're running a big book of business, I'm a total for-profit organization. So I want to go where the capital is being allocated. And the two choices typically back in 2007, 2008, 2009 were China or India. And so I said, why don't we start with China? And basically what we did was we leveraged our good work and quality work that we did in the US and asked to meet the colleagues or the counterparts in China. And that is how we translated our business globally.
That's amazing. And Dr. Ng, you also pioneered your company to pivot towards an effective supplier diversity program emphasizing in minority women and disabled business enterprises. Can you tell us a little bit about how that helped your bottom line and the culture of the company?
Yeah, so our company here locally is registered with the Chicago MSDC as a minority-owned company. We're registered with the WBDC, which is the Women's Business Development Council, which is nationally WeBank. We also have the Asian American certification. And all that did was pretty much give us the introductions or put us in front of the diversity managers and things like that. And that doesn't grab you business. It probably just gets you into the side door, not through the front door. And I used to always say this. I was like, I'm not a Kennedy, I'm not a Rockefeller, so, I'm not privy to some of these introductions. So you take the introductions to where where they'll take you. And eventually, companies like Kraft Foods and PepsiCo want to help minority-owned, women-owned companies thrive. And so I was kind of scooped up. So I actually got to go to the Kellogg school because Kraft Foods sponsored me for executive MBA, that type of thing. And so they want to help you, and I was like, I'll do it. If someone's got to go to school, I'll go to school, right? So that's kind of how you get involved in that way. And then you just build relationships and that's how the company grew and pivoted. And you have to change your company and the mission and how you do business every couple of years. If you do the same thing, that's no longer the hot thing anymore.
I know my oldest daughter, she lives in Manhattan, and she said, Mommy, the trend now is that every 2 years I have to go to a new company. I said, what happened to the staying in a company for 35, 40 years? She goes, no, that's just not no, young people change companies 每2年换新公司怎么这样 Like, wait a minute, where's the loyalty? She goes, no, companies need us. They need kids, so we can do it. I said, that's not fair. How about us older people who want you to stay longer? So that's very interesting that if your workforce is going to be younger and they're turning every 2 or 4 years, your executive management also has to turn. And that leads me to one of my favorite questions, which nobody wants to answer except for Deputy Governor. Karen said, I'm not answering the halls of power question. Is that Deputy Governor has such a wonderful career of public service, of giving back to the community, of leading very, very difficult charters for now managing 12 agencies and programs for this great state. So she works with halls of power daily. This is her job, and she does a fantastic job with that. So the question is halls of power, right? Because Chinese people and India and the rest of Asia, we're 61% of the world's population. We're 52% of consumers in tech, entertainment, and media. But we have trouble accessing American halls of power. So the question is this: what are some ways, Deputy Governor, that halls of power can help advance Asian American leaders and Asian women?
Well, so I would say that there needs to be intentionality and a desire amongst people who are in leadership to want to give other people the opportunity. I listened to Dr. Ng's story and her experience as it relates to different corporations, giving her the opportunity to access another degree, to come into the side door, and then one day, hopefully, we will all have the red carpet into the front door. You know, as I think about my own career and how I ended up here, I would say that when I was working at Chinese American Service League in Chinatown, I was doing fundraising, I couldn't have imagined that one day I would be able to serve this great state as deputy governor. And so my career path has not been an intentional kind of by design. I worked very hard, and I would say that it was people like Bernie Wong, like Eamon Vien, who were my predecessors at Chinese American Service League and Chinese Mutual Aid, who made and Jean Lee, who made it their job to introduce me to people of power. And so I have tried in every way that I have been able to do the same and to open doors for other Asian American women, Asian American people in general, and other folks who want to give back to government. So when I was at Chinese Mutual Aid Association, before I became assistant secretary at the Department of Human Services, I ran a $4 million nonprofit organization with about 40 staff. The administration at the time interviewed me, and the secretary of the Department of Human Services gave me a chance. I think in part because I had this cultural heritage and background and the commitment that I had not only to the Chinese American community, but to the Asian American community and the immigrant refugee community. She saw me as an asset to her team. And I went from running a $5 million organization back in 2003 to being number 2 at a $6 billion agency. Did I demonstrate? Was I able to prove to her definitively that I could make that leap? No, she gave me a chance. And so I think what people need is a chance to prove themselves. And I think probably everybody in this room is a chance giver. And I think there's a lot of opportunities along the way for us to make introductions. I read every single email I get, and I respond to every person. In fact, Edward Soul, who's our Dunn Fellow here in the governor's office, I first met him last year when an old childhood friend of mine said, I met this young man, I think he's just graduating from Yale, he wants to work in government, and I did a one-on-one, he's right over there, and now he's an intern in my office and in the governor's office, and he's writing executive orders for our governor. So I would not have been able to meet this bright young man if I had not made it my policy to make sure that my door is absolutely wide open and making sure that I'm opening doors for others as well.
No, I love that. And you know, there is a corporate metric you all know called ROIC, Return on Invested Capital. And while the deputy governor was speaking, I swear this is true, I have a new ROIC. I think that the key to success for Asian Americans, for women, and for all of us here is relationship as a R, 关系，关系最重要，对不对? O is opportunity, I is intention, and C is this community right here. Well, you can also put China as a C. But let's say community, okay, well, Asian community. So ROIC, I think that she really encapsulated all of that in her remarks here. So we have a final question, which is the burning question that I encourage you to think about as you drive home today, which is this. Let's say that you have $100 million US in your pocket. You have taken care of your family, you have donated to your foundations, everything, etc. You've planted trees, you've done everything on your wish list that you wanted to do. After tax, you have $100 million. US dollars. If you have this and you've taken care of everyone, you've given to, okay, you have this money, all right. Dr. Lee, what do you think you would like your legacy to be if you have this amount? What would you love to see happen?
I would love to see researchers in Asia do better research and publish in the top journals. And I think they need training. That's what I want.
Researchers need money, okay? Everyone, CEOs out there, okay, please fund research. No, that's really wise because actually nowadays in America, when you give to a nonprofit, charitable 501c3, it's almost a little bit like a marketing. It's a cheaper way to market your stance. A lot of Chinese CEOs ask me, why should I donate? Okay, it's a way to market your stance. Also, when you donate, you can share in the IP. Oh, everyone looked up from their phones. If you donate to research or some kind of charitable organization and they're in the business of creating intellectual property, you can be invited to share in the IP. Of course, you can also donate the IP back to the charity, but you can share in the IP. That way, you get full disclosure of your donation in the research. So that is wonderful, wonderful advice. I love that legacy. Thank you so much. And Dr. Karen Ng, your legacy with 100, she did tell me something about a red Porsche, but maybe we...
Yeah, I would first figure out what bank I'm going to deposit my money into first. So I would ask whoever could get me a red Porsche 911 convertible first, I will put my money with them. That was a technical.
The first bank that gives her heart's desire gets her money.
Okay, then after that. So we have legacy both ways. So we have legacy with my parents or my family, my grandparents. And I think we were talking about this earlier, about that's the family business and making sure that that's sustainable. It might not necessarily go to my daughter, but just probably keep it in the family or keep the family name in there and the intent and the mission of what my parents started. As I told you, Maki, earlier, I have a 98-year-old grandmother that lives in Chinatown, and I have a 95-year-old grandmother that lives in Chinatown, Chicago here. And they're independent, and they're mobile, and they're sharp as tacks. And you know, we do our part in helping to support them. And then we, in turn, help my parents, which in turn helps us. So it behooves us to do really well in business so that we can keep supporting our family. And then my thing is I like working at the engineering company because it helps me support the community. So as long as the company's doing well, we can give to Castle and CMAA and some of the national organizations, the Committee 100, all that kind of stuff. So that's that side. And then the other side is I have a daughter who's 20 years old, and that I want her to see how you can do good in this world instead of just trying to make money and be, you know, there's always someone that's going to be richer or smarter or cuter or whatever you want to call it, but how you can be the best person that you can be, and that giving back does make you a happier person.
You know, I love what she said because this is one area of weakness in many Chinese executives. that we can learn from our American counterparts, which is emphasizing the legacy of our family. A lot of times we don't want to talk about the family because 大家吃苦，很辛苦, it's too much, it's too... No, actually, Americans love to hear how much you have worked and suffered. I started with nothing. A lot of our inductees said, I came here with $20, I will die with $20. Meanwhile, I made $500 million on this pickup stick. Okay, in between you can say how great you did, but Americans like it when you put a little bit of suffering here. Like Penny always says, I came here and I drove my car to Chicago. And see, people like that story. So I encourage the Chinese executives, if you're serious about doing business in the United States, and you're serious about making friends cross-culturally, interracially, you need to sprinkle a little, not too much soy sauce, a little bit of vulnerable, vinegar. Really suffered my grandma. You know, we came here and then now it's still hard. It's still very hard. It's very important, okay? If you say, oh, everything is fine, we went to Harvard, my grandson's MIT, we created Google. Okay, that's not as interesting. People don't want to be friends with you. In America, it's very important. They have to like you, and then they will give you the business. So now, finally, with the Deputy Governor and the $100 million question, what would you love your legacy to look like?
Oh, it's such a hard question because you changed it up a little bit.
changed it.
Because the question before was no $100 million.
Money, no
so
money.
that really...
We're with Chinese people, money.
I mean, I think it's really interesting. So my mother, who passed away now 10 years ago, you know, the reason that I do what I do is because she said to me the most important thing that I want you to focus on in your life is to be happy and to do something that brings you joy. And so the money aspect, the profit making, was never part of my calculus. And so I was trying to sit here and think about what I would do with $100 million. But I want to, I mean, I think at the end of the day, many immigrants, many children of immigrants, and the legacy of immigrants is that we solve problems. We come to a new place. I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest child of immigrant parents, and I was the one answering the phone when a credit card company calls or the utility calls, and I can speak without an accent, so I have the respect of whoever is on the other end. And so I was always the one who's problem solving. And I've carried that kind of essence of problem solving into my work in nonprofit and government. I think at the end of the day, the $100 million aside, when I was thinking about this question, I really just want people who knew me to think that I was a good person, that I was kind to them, and that when I interacted with them, they felt heard and listened to, and that I actually made an imprint on this state and the communities that I care so much about a better place. And I want my kids, just like all of you, whether you are an aunt or an uncle or a godmother or a godfather, I want my kids to think that I was like the best mom ever. And that when they carry through in their lives, that they know whether I'm on this earth or not, that I'm watching them, you know.
Can I have your $1 million?
Yes.
$100 million?
No, well, I was
I
going to
want $1
say,
million.
I would also like to establish a foundation because I worked in philanthropy previously, and I can't remember actually more than a small handful of family foundations that have Asian American benefactors. So maybe can I have some of yours and we can pool together the Eng Ho Foundation? Okay. And then I would like to have a home in Hawaii.
I love that, and it's also goes back to the idea of giving back to the community. Now, Connie Chung, you all know, is a famous broadcast journalist, and she is an Asian Hall of Fame inductee, class of 2016. She received her Centennial Medal just a few months ago in Los Angeles. And she has something to share, I felt really changed my life with everyone here, which is as much as a big person as Connie Chung knows, everyone who's China knows Connie Chung. Americans loved Connie Chung. She's beloved across the strait. She shook everyone's hand. Hi, how are you? What is your name? Nice to meet you, Michael. Hi, I'm Connie. so humble. Humble is not being quiet. Humble is recognizing that everyone has something to contribute to the community and to your company. We were backstage. She thanked the audio engineer. Thank you so much for the audio. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for the lighting. She shook everyone's hand and greeted them by name. Now, this is not something a man can do well because they're very proud. You know, they don't want to touch COVID issues. No, I'm big. But Asian women can do it very well. We can shake everyone's hand. How are you? Hello, Deputy Governor. Nice. Thank you for coming. We can be that cultural ambassador. And all of us here are, these amazing women are, and I'm sure in your organization you also have women executives who can be given the opportunity to learn how to ambassador, how to outreach, and how to give back. So thank you so much for this opportunity to present Asian Women Executives.